This is Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com. I hope you enjoyed this Critical Thought, your daily discussion on game design. Welcome to today's Critical Thought, everybody. But first, thank you for we're over 900 subscribers here on the YouTube channel. I really do appreciate everyone subscribing, and for you first-time viewers, if you're enjoying things, be sure to like and subscribe, as we are now less than 100 subs away from the big 1,000. I still haven't gotten around to doing my 800 subscriber Let's Play voted, which was for Hitman. I need to get going on that. But at 900, I have another vote for you folks to look at. I figure as we're heading up to 1,000, it's a time to always look back and reflect. And what better way to reflect than looking back at some of the classic indie games that have came out in the last few years. So for your 900 subscriber vote, the vote's going to be for which one of these classic indie games would you like me to do a complete Let's Break on. Right now your choices are going to be Aquaria, which was a sort of like a mix between Echo the Dolphin and Metroidvania-like design. Bastion, the first game from Supergiant Games, and one of my favorite indie games of the last few years. Or we could do a playthrough of Fez, the infamous game from, of course, Phil Fish. With that one, I know there are several secrets that require a little bit of outside information to get through. I'm going to try to get through the game, but I can at least get through most of the campaign or main content with that one. Also, for hitting 900, I can announce another big vote for the big 1,000 subscriber Let's Play when we hit, at this rate, hopefully very soon, 1,000 subscribers. That is going to be, this choice is going to be a chance for me to look at a game that I tried but I didn't particularly like. And I figure, what better way to sort of try something new than to go back to a game that I didn't get into. And the series that I'm choosing for this one is, of course, the style of games from Bethesda Studios. So for this vote, I'm going to have you guys vote between either doing a Let's Play on Skyrim or on Fallout 3 or 4, whatever your choice is. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of their designs just due to their combination of RPG and action mechanics, but if that's the one that's picked for 1,000, that's the one we're going to do. And for those of you who've got the previous choices, I will bring those up when we hit 1,000 subscribers. But enough about that. Let's talk about today's topic, and that is non-gamers. As you can see by that amazingly realistic photo I found on Google up there. And if you think that's the only one, trust me, there are a lot more. This is based on the post for today that should be going up right around here. And it's in response to an article I read on Game Industry Biz yesterday titled, Why Games Are Boring. And the author, I just want to pull this up here, or Video Games Are Boring. The author talked about her experience with trying to introduce non-gamers to the video game industry, and how they really just bounced off of her suggestions, and about how video games still are, for a lot of people, a very insular hobby. Now, whenever I see these pieces about introducing people to video games and such, I always see the same kind of issue, and that is that they only look towards the mainstream. One of the big differences about the video game industry compared to other entertainment mediums is how our indie market has really evolved and distinguished itself. Usually when we look at what's considered indie, it's the outsiders, the ones that are very much aimed at a specific niche, and everything from, grunge rock, punk, Sundance movies, anything that you're not going to see in a mainstream market or what the mainstream would be interested in. With video games, however, the independent market has really become the source for some of the most diverse and in many cases most welcoming games to the game industry. We've seen everything from titles like Stardew Valley, Her Story, Gone Home, even games that have educational or learning elements to them, such as the infamous example Minecraft, the games from Zachtronics, you name it. But they're never really brought up in popular conversation or whenever we're trying to pitch games to people who aren't playing games or who haven't grown up with them. Now, with that said, the article talked about some of the challenges of appeal. And I think whenever we talk about this, I think there's a big difference between universal appeal and universal accessibility. Accessibility, as we've talked about in previous critical thoughts, is always something you should be striving for with game development, whether it's something as simple as a runner to something as complex as a grand strategy game. The more accessible your game is, the better design it's going to be, and the easier it will be for everyone to enjoy it. With that said, I am not a believer in universal appeal. I think for everything out there, there's always going to be people who are going to ignore it or outright hate it. For my example, during my brief window of playing football games back in 2002, I tried to get my dad, who is a huge football player, to try playing Madden and some of the other football games at the time with me. He tried it for like a few minutes and he just couldn't get into it and stopped. Now, with that said, of course, the Madden games and by extension football or sports games may not be the most accessible games to begin with. But I do think that there is a limit on just how much appeal a game can have. Now, from the article, she talked about some of the challenges and some of the things that her friends wanted to look at in terms of trying to get them into playing video games. And a few of the main points, and this is where I think the indie market succeeds, is how they differ from the mainstream. From her list, she talked about how first her friends didn't want to play anything stressful. That includes anything with forced combat, danger, fighting, anything that, has like weight or stakes to it. For us gamers, we're used to coming home after a tough day and playing a game where we're, running an empire or chasing down monsters. And I know for me, I find Dark Souls sometimes a very relaxing game to play. Although I think relaxing and Dark Souls may not fit together in the right sentence. But for people who aren't used to games, they want to play something that they can relax to, something that they can learn about. Now, from her article, she did mention one point that I think is going to be very hard, and that is one about exploring themselves, exploring, their personalities or their life experiences, very much emotional things. And I'm not an emotional guy, so unfortunately, this is one topic that I'm not going to be able to touch too much on. But when it comes to games that are welcoming or inviting to people, while still providing something to enjoy, I came up with a list for today of 8 games that I felt were really good to introduce someone who is not a gamer to. The first one, of course, would be Gone Home, a game about more of the story and exploring the very graphic or mature themes that were going on in it. Obviously, I can't tell you exactly what that is because that would spoil the game. But it's a game where there are no stakes, there's no pressure to play. It's you basically taking a walking tour of this house and uncovering what's going on. Of course, the next game would be Stardew Valley. And Stardew Valley is perhaps a great example of why the independent market is such a good place for non-gamers to look. This is a game that was built because the developer didn't have any of these games to play, and he wanted a game like this, which was similar to the Harvest Moon series. And he spent 4 years of his life making it. And again, the independent scene is really where we see these games that aren't going to be made in the AAA market, but there's still a niche market or even just an audience for. Now, with Stardew Valley, of course, we know there is combat, but it is completely optional. If you just want to spend your days talking to the locals and building your farm, you're free to do that. And that's why I think it's a great game for non-gamers. Now, this next one, I probably just broke my own rule on games that are easy to get into, and I included the games from Zachtronics, TIS-100, Infinite Factory, and Shenzhen IO. These would be games for people who want to learn. As I said, there are people who want to play games that help them or make them grow in some capacity, and these three games are definitely there. They're incredibly challenging, very deep, and they're about teaching you lateral thinking and the building blocks or the foundations for programming logic. But they are, of course, incredibly complicated and may not be, the best game for someone who's not already or who is already looking for these kinds of challenges. If they're not, you better keep them away from these. The next one I included was Her Story, or as I like to call it, the only visual novel game I really enjoyed. Her Story, of course, is built on you essentially solving a mystery, and it's a little bit more engaging, I think, compared to Gone Home. The fact that you had a FMV actress or a real person there, I think, elevated the game's story and sort of pulling you into this world. Again, it's one of those games I can't talk too much about without outright spoiling it, so let's move on. Number 5 is a game that, quite frankly, you may be surprised that I know of and enjoy, and that was Cook, Serve, Delicious. This is a game for people who want something fun and frantic to play. It's a game that has like restaurant sim aspects to it, but has no basis in reality for how you cook. It's all about different kind of typing challenges and keeping up with the hectic pace of the experience. Still very lighthearted. One of those games you could either play for like 10 minutes, do one day of cooking, or sit for an hour or two and go through an entire month of in-game time. But still very fun, and they're working on a sequel to it as we speak. Going back to learning, I chose Rocksmith. This is, of course, a game by Ubisoft, which tries to combine Rock Band or Guitar Hero with actually learning a guitar. Someday I actually need to try this game out for myself, because I've always wanted to try learning guitar, and I failed utterly back in junior high or high school during music class. Of course, this is probably the most expensive game for people wanting to get into, because you need to purchase the game, and you obviously need the guitar and the hookup for it. But for someone who's interested in music or learning guitar, this is probably the closest we're going to get video game wise to that. And going back to, again, with more learning and on the complicated side, I picked Kerbal Space Program, a game that right now, for those of you watching this, I'm fairly sure you know what it's all about. Kerbal Space Program is, of course, the game where you're essentially building rockets and shooting them into space, built on a realistic physics model and rocket science. It's gotten, I think, easier for new players to pick up, but it's still a very complicated game. But it still has the low stakes and the freedom to explore at your leisure that I think would be great for someone brand new to play. And it's also one of those games I think could fit very well in a classroom setting, along with Minecraft. Although I didn't choose Minecraft for this list, because the other thing that I wanted to avoid for non-gamers is the fact that they may not be used to or may not want to deal with, fantasy or insane situations. Games where we play as a cockroach and we have to go through a hotel, or saving the universe from unending evil. And of course, I would include Dark Souls on a list for non-gamers to try and get into for the first time. And the last game for my list, and I think should be a given, is The Sims. While The Sims isn't my particular cup of tea, it's a great game about pretty much having your own virtual dollhouse or being able to create your own soap operas. And it was one of the first, and I think one of only the few AAA games to really be aimed at a casual or non-core market. Of course, it has expansions after expansions after expansions at this moment, but there really isn't anything like this for The Sims. It's very welcoming for new players. And again, it's one of those games that you're free to put as much into it as you want. The game's not going to force you to play. It's not going to pop up with alerts saying, come back and play for 2 hours. It's one of those games that you can really dig into at your own pace. And if you like it, keep playing. If not, put it aside. And I think that's another thing for non-gamers. Some of the best games should be those that don't require a lasting commitment to it. MMOs, I don't think I would introduce to new players, especially considering the amount of hours it takes to play, and they may have heard or have read multiple stories about video game addiction. So you probably don't want to put them into that deep end of the pool from the get-go. But I'm sure there are plenty more games out there that you folks could suggest as well. So if you have any, make sure to leave a comment below and we can certainly talk about it. We're going to wrap up today's critical thought here. Once again, thank you so much for subscribing. We are now less than 100 away from 1,000, and I'm sure things will get even more exciting when we get there. Like I said, I have another treat plan when we hit 1,000 that I'll be revealing. But be sure to vote for the 900 subscriber Let's Play, and I will hopefully be getting to Hitman in the coming days. Right now, of course, there are some Let's Plays going on Clockwork Empires and Book of Demons, and we'll see what happens next. So, with all that said, once again, thank you for tuning in today's Critical Thought. I'm Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com, where we examine the art and science of games. Be sure to come back tomorrow for more great content here and on GameWisdom.com. Thanks again for subscribing, and see you all then. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and of course share with your friends. It always helps out. For daily posts on all manner of game design and industry topics, check out game-wisdom.com. To support the site and everything that I do, be sure to check out the Patreon campaign. If we can hit goals, it will mean more content for everyone to enjoy, and I'll be able to support myself and my household. If you want to follow me, you can find me on Twitter at GWBycer for updates throughout the day and random thoughts from me. And lastly, you can find me on Twitch right over there at GWBycer for daily streams most nights around 10 Eastern. Thanks again for watching the video, and be sure to check out more great content coming to the Game Wisdom channel real soon.